Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Today we've gathered to record an episode about the human being. Who is a human? Why did we appear here? What awaits us in the future? But in order to understand the future of humanity, we first need to define what a human actually is. I think you're about to shed some great light on this for us. Could you say right off the bat who a human being is?
A human is definitely not just a physical body, and not even just consciousness. A human is a habitat, a collective personality, and a space for self-development of the human being itself, and as a result, something greater than what we normally think of as a person.
So a human comes here to develop something within themselves, beyond themselves, in the surrounding world, in the energy information layer. What kind of evolution do you think humanity is going through right now?
In my view, humanity as a whole is slowing itself down right now. When a lot of novelty appears, people tend to get stuck in it. And instead of staying balanced and moving from one level to another, they sink into that novelty. A certain layer gets formed where attention becomes trapped, and the transition to the next level never happens. At that point, nature begins to push for change, development, transformation, because any cataclysms, epidemics, wars, they're all indicators that inertia has set in.
Has it always been like that?
Yes, it's always been like that. And so far, no one has invented a medicine for it. The reason probably lies in the human being itself and in the very way humans interact with each other.
If we highlight some core qualities, how would you describe what a human is made of? What are the main components that connect a person with the outside world? Is it energy, attention, thoughts, actions? What's primary? Is there a certain set of qualities that defines a human personality?
It's actually easier to describe a person's personality through what you could call maternal love. A human being begins with their mother. She's the matrix that brought them into this world. And we're not going to talk about humanity as a whole right now. We're talking about specific individuals who appear here. Because a person's environment directly influences what their consciousness will be like, what interests they'll have, and what values they'll live by. And again, how much value they become for God, for the universe, for the energy information space, and of course, for the environment they exist in.
Then let me ask you a complex question right away. How is this individuality formed?
Let's start with the fact that we're all programs. We're basically software. You could also call it a focus of attention that includes a certain state and the channels of expression. That includes sensing, emotionality, intellect, and the ability to identify and choose by similarity based on the experience that was embedded by the mother and father at the moment of conception, during the mother's pregnancy, and later when the mother created the conditions for the child's upbringing through the environment and through her own behavior.
But even that was programmed to some degree. Those are the starting conditions, the circumstances someone enters. But who enters them? A spirit?
What we need to understand is that we're all here to go through experience of gaining knowledge through sensations, because sensation is living in the here and now. And of course, everything we experience here, what we perceive, analyze, interact with, gets transmitted further into the universe. And there are countless types of consciousness there. You could call them civilizations that are interested in how we go through these lessons and how we pass them through ourselves, how we embody them, meaning it's not just something that exists in consciousness, it becomes manifested through us in this world. Even if this world is somewhat illusory and limited by time, space, and matter.
In anthropology, for example, everyone knows that at a certain point Homo sapiens appeared. But in your view, when did humans gain consciousness?
Let's start with the fact that,
or maybe not everyone even has consciousness now.
If we go all the way back to the early evolution of the planet, we were physically much less dense. We were more energetic in nature and to some extent more harmonious. But as the planet cooled down, we became more materialized and began appearing through different forms. Still, in my view, and this is purely my personal opinion, planet Earth was artificially created by a certain form of consciousness. By focusing a vast amount of attention and consciousness from different realms and states, it created what we call planet Earth, the solar system, and the universe. But at the same time, that's just our perception. Because if we look through the perception of other forms of consciousness, the vision, understanding, sensations, the entire picture would be completely different.
Every person has consciousness. Every individual recognizes themselves as an individual. But are they truly consciousness? Do they perceive themselves as something greater? Because there are many theories that some people have no soul, some have no consciousness, that there are bots, inertia, automated patterns. To what degree can someone be called a truly conscious, aware human being?
Everything is defined by love, and in a broader sense, that's harmony with different spheres of interaction. First comes the inner state, second comes sensing and feeling, third comes action. And the more that inner state includes interaction with different spheres and interests, nature, people, animals, various phenomena, knowledge, information, thought forms, and the more all of that is integrated within a person, the more conscious they are. But the majority of people are asleep. They are limited from the moment of birth by their mothers and by the fears their mothers carry. That matrix initially blocks about 95 to 97% of people. They become inert. Most of their actions and decisions come from fear, not from development, not from trust in the world, because when we are in love, we have no conflict with anyone. We've clearly seen that people in a certain state can calmly interact with snakes, sharks, lions, and those animals respond to them calmly. But when a person is in fear, what is fear? Fear is a program aimed at destroying what we are afraid of. And what do humans usually fear? Novelty, growth, transformation. But the important thing to understand is this: it's not the person who is afraid. It's the beliefs they're trapped inside that are afraid.
Are those fears justified?
First and foremost, they're imaginary fears.
But they often materialize.
There's a concept that consciousness shapes matter. When a person fears something, they enter into conflict with it and begin trying to destroy it. That thing begins defending itself, and we create a process of destruction. Our whole evolution is about learning to trust ourselves, trust the space around us, and trust the universe. If we think through negation, through fear, through aggression, which is generated by fear, then of course we create a huge number of conflicts. Love, on the other hand, is harmony, the interaction of everything with everything. But as we see from what's happening in the world, the dominant pattern is one thing consuming another, from nature itself to humans, corporations, and everything else. And no matter how much we frame it through the theory that humanity is moving toward compassion and unity, in reality, it often resembles the utopian idea of communism, from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs. That's a false premise, because first the foundation has to change, the conditions have to change, and only when those conditions actually work can a principle like that become real.
Based on what you just said, it almost sounds like being humane isn't really possible. People will just swallow you whole.
The key thing to understand is this: when someone tries to be humane artificially, they will always lose. Because the principle of humanity is actually the level of love a person carries. But that's not the same as the idea of tolerance, where someone slaps one cheek and you're supposed to offer the other, surrender, and become someone you never wanted to be. If a very underdeveloped level of consciousness tries to control us and we give into it, we will quickly degrade and eventually be destroyed. Because the level of consciousness is defined by the presence of love. I'd like to give a vivid example: the movie Stand By Me. It came out in 1989 and was based on real events.
Lean on me.
Right, Lean on Me. Thanks for correcting me. Let me briefly describe the plot, because it ties directly into what we're talking about: humanity. Right now, everything is flipped upside down. For some reason, we start behaving humanely toward criminals while treating decent, rule-abiding people in an antisocial way. We humiliate them, hurt them, betray them, all to protect those who are destroying the system. The principle is actually very simple. There must always be feedback. When there's no feedback, degradation happens very fast. In the film, the teacher promoted active development in the school. Kids were learning through play, through curiosity. It became one of the best schools in the city. But eventually, the administration didn't like the way he taught and shared knowledge, so they fired him. 20 years later, that same school had become the worst school in the city, an absolute wreck. Then the mayor wanted to run for re-election and realized he needed to boost his ratings. That's a separate topic. We'll talk about politicians later. So he invited that teacher back to become the principal. And the first thing that humane principal did was this. Out of 3,000 students, he expelled 10%, the ones who had no intention of studying, no intention of changing, and who were terrorizing the other 2,700 students. They were beating them, starting knife fights, selling drugs, destroying property. He simply removed them from the school and focused on teaching the students who actually wanted to learn. And the school became one of the leading schools again. It rose to the top. The principle here is simple. A single spoonful of tar can ruin a whole barrel of honey. We have to learn to differentiate. If we place something into an environment that has no intention of harmonizing with it, that element will destroy the environment. The whole barrel of honey turns into tar, and that's exactly what humanity really means. Ordinary people should not be forced to tolerate the inhumane behavior of criminals and scoundrels.
Let's say within that school the problem was solved, but those 300 students still remained out there in society.
We have to understand that we cannot change people.
All of them.
If they don't want to change. But we can create a social trend where people who refuse to learn or develop still have the opportunity to change. However, if they choose not to, then their rights become significantly limited, and that would actually be humane toward everyone else. Because if we treat those people with the same tolerance we give to law-abiding citizens, we automatically create a degrading society. Eventually, it will turn into something destructive that might show up as epidemics, conflicts, or dishonest people rising to power in politics. You once said something like, talent needs help, while mediocrity will break through on its own. Those 300 mediocre individuals, if we build our social systems, hierarchies, and structures incorrectly, will absolutely climb into power and destroy the whole society. Because people who are engaged in constructive, humane processes must be protected from those who break the rules of the game. That's the whole point.
From the perspective of governance, though, that politician who wanted re-election should have also created some kind of rehabilitation system for those remaining social units.
We need to understand something very clearly. Most people who go into politics go there to grab a piece of the pie. Let's be honest about it. There are very few, actually almost none, who truly intend to make the world better. What they're interested in is getting into power and taking part in dividing up the pie. That's it, nothing more.
So that's human nature then?
No, it's a problem of upbringing and a failure to create the right conditions from the very beginning, conditions where mothers can truly be mothers, because the foundation of everything is the woman. Everything in this world is built on feminine energy. It's often called the matrix, and that matrix is made up of women. As long as women live in fear, jealousy, competition, constant adaptation, indecision, resentment, aggression, rigidity, envy, the world will keep sinking. Always. We won't overcome wars, we won't overcome epidemics. Instead, we'll keep reaching complete collapse over and over again, just to start rebuilding from scratch. Science and technology won't save us either. They'll always move in the wrong direction if the foundation is wrong. What we actually need is real motherhood. Women who live in love, women who live in happiness, women with a spark in their eyes, women with curiosity and drive, not women trapped in extremes, either constant submission or radical emancipation. What do they call women like that?
Dominant types?
Feminists.
Yes, feminists.
Women who want to have a penis, even though they obviously don't, whether that's unfortunate or fortunate.
That's dominance.
And they try to run everything as if they were men. There's no point in trying to create conditions where women become equal to men in the sense of being the same. Women should be women, valued as women. Men should be men, valued as men. Each has their own role. A man will never give birth to a child, no matter how much he might try or wish to.
No matter how hard he tries.
Everyone has their own functions, defined by nature, defined by God. And when those roles are turned upside down and false values are promoted, it's usually because of those same people fighting over that political pie, competing for voters' support. Right there, from the start, that politician is already false because he's not interested in the voters. He's interested in the position. And usually these are weak people. Just like I mentioned earlier about women who are obsessed with urgently having a child. Often they have serious psychological issues, deep internal problems, and they can become some of the worst mothers imaginable if they desperately want a child at any cost, because the program of destroying children can sometimes disguise itself as the intense desire to have children.
So you're saying it's a woman with unrealized potential trying to find her place in the
She
world?
tries to ground that unrealized potential through the child, using the child as an outlet for what was never fulfilled in her.